Greetings to all. Now, it is really fabulous for us to have our parents from adults and families. One is a Chinese mother and the other is a Danish father. So we would hear what they have to share on well-being and future and the right to be imperfect, about their experiences and upcoming challenges. And I look forward to what's going to happen myself. And now, let's first hear the self-introduction. Okay, now Peter, you can go first.
Yeah, my name is Peter. I come from Denmark. I have 2 kids, a daughter and a son. The daughter is 17 years old. My son is 15 years old. I'm married with the Chinese, and she's absolutely perfect. So I come also from a big family. I have one brother, a little brother. I have a little sister, and I have an older sister, and I have a half sister that we take care of. Older generations, there's only my mother left, so we take care of her also. I worked my professional life. I worked as a manager, purchasing, development, sourcing. Too many years. I have had my own factories in China, producing, and now I am working in Denmark as I left China 5, 6, 7 years ago, and in general I've been in China more than 20 years. So my daughter was born in Brussels in Europe, and my son was born in Army Hospital, Shenyang, North China. So that's a short introduction about us.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. So you're married to a Chinese, right?
Yes.
And one of your child was born in China also.
Yes.
So it's really fantastic that you may know very well about Chinese education. Now we will hear the self-introduction of Haixia. Okay, I'll introduce myself. I live in Beijing now, and the outskirts of Beijing, in the western part of the northwest part of Beijing, and I've been a lawyer for over a decade. And I've also been manager in enterprises, and I only have one child. So I really envy Peter, especially for my husband, because he really wants a daughter, but we only have a son. Okay, you still have some chance. Well, that is really challenging. Our son is 12 years old. So ever since his primary school, we sent him to a school of innovation education in the outskirts of Beijing. So that is not a public school. As we all know, that non-public schools in China really suffer now, but that school is handy there. So my son has been studying there for 7 years. And as Ms. Jiang mentioned, that as a mother, such experience really helped me and enlightened me. And as for my own family, I also have siblings. Peter just mentioned, my parents actually didn't pay much attention to our growth. But as my father used to belong to the army, so he was really strict with us, with our development. And as you can notice, that I am not so female as a woman. So that is the reason of my family education, because of the strict family education of my parents, especially my father. And for my husband, I've been divorced and I'm married to my husband. And in terms of personality, my husband is more liberal than me in personality. So in terms of education viewpoint, he is more laid back and relaxed in education. So in terms of how we educate our child, it is a game of balance. For me, I think that there must be rules. If without rules, we would not be disciplined. But if there is too much strictness of my education, then my child would not be that liberal. So sometimes my husband is correct in education. So there is a trajectory of education. That is better when my child was little. Is our relationship was better back to his early childhood, and the school really helped to strengthen our communication. But ever since my son turned to be a teenager, he has his own space. So now we're facing something new in his teenager years. So how should we communicate, exchange with our child is also what I would like to communicate with you. Okay, fabulous. First of all, I would like to first ask you a question. In terms of the theme of our forum, well-being of the future, but our children nowadays focus on study merely. So what is the relationship between the status of nowadays and the well-being of the future? Last year, the foreign theme that well-being as the motivation of studying, and I believe that both of you have been engaged in studying to a large extent, and is also studying now. And innovation and motivation play a major part in study. So what's your viewpoint? So Peter, was you a hard learner back to your early days?
I can only say
Was you
like
happy?
this. Yeah, I will always say like this, that you have to be basically a well-being first before you can study. If you, as a person, is balanced inside yourself, then it doesn't really matter what you study, as long as it makes you happy and drives forward, then you will get most out of it. So for me, when I look at my kids and it's like that, it's very important for me to see that they are balanced as persons in order for them to take the decision that is right for them in education field. I will not tell them what to study. I will not tell them what to do. I will discuss with them the options they have, but I will definitely support them in whatever choice they make. That is my point of view on this topic here. And it's a little bit different, but what I have been used to, because my parents pushed me through education. I have, in the young years, when I left 10th grade, I was pushed to go to a higher technical degree. I was pushed to that. And that resulted in that I rebelled. I had a rebellion in my teenage years. And I was thrown out from home when I was 15 because I did not agree at all what my parents said. That was totally, I was not ready for this kind of education and this pressure. And that I will not give my kids. They should have, first of all, a base where they can come down, where they feel safe. And then I will support them in whatever they want to try in education field. Only then, when they take decision, they also take the ownership of that. And by that, it makes it much more easier through the teenage years. That is my, how to say, view on that very much.
Okay, thank you so much. So as Peter mentioned, in teenage years, there's a strong desire for them to make decisions for themselves. So here comes a pressure for parents. So Haixia, are you feeling such pressure now? What's the relationship between well-being in the future and the status nowadays? Actually, I have asked my child that question. Are you happy now studying? His response was like this. Studying is meant to be happy, but I am not that happy now. It's because that he thinks, because it's now in a comparatively relaxed way of thinking with his teachers. delivering education in an interesting way. But as all of us can understand that every child differ in learning capability for the exactly same thing. Some children race faster and some are slower. So such a pressure is inevitable in a group. Such a pressure would not trigger well-being. Instead, it will lead to anxiety and stress. For example, if the child is not so outgoing, he would just put pressure on himself. So that would not be so good. My child is one of them. So he is not putting some inner pressure to himself. But in this very stage, he hasn't come to realize that the status nowadays has something to do with the well-being in the future. So whenever we tell them the fear is like this, he will also show rebellion. And that is also true with the teacher's comment on our child. Our teacher always say that your son is fabulous, except he is not into studying instead of playing. So now this is a time for studying. So we should study. As Peter mentioned, I couldn't agree more on that. Well-being is about the inner balance. It definitely is engaged with. So well-being is not the absence of challenges or barriers. Well-being is a process about ups and downs. Whenever we face some challenge, we will not lose ourselves and make something, make a difference. So that is what well-being is all about. So in the relation between well-being and motivation of study, I don't think a clear relation between them. Back when I was little, as I was a girl, so I do not have rebellion during my adolescent years. I started my rebellion ever since I was 30 years old. So I was awakened in a late stage for a career and base city chosen. I made my decisions. I made those changes when I was 28 or 29. So motivation for study comes from responsibility to a larger extent back to my days. We do something not because of the well-being in us. Instead, it is because of the responsibility of it. It is more like fear from it. That's right. Studying. Okay, for my husband, he thinks that human beings are born lazy. We are born lazy, craving for a cozy life, and reluctant to make a change. So studying is against human nature. So that is his viewpoint. So such studying, if we want to translate it into inner motivation, there is a process of inner growth. So for well-being, at least for adolescent children, there is no clear relationship between them. Okay. Okay. As your son said, studying is meant to be happy. So but now I don't feel so happy studying. After hearing that, I just can't help thinking that your son really thought about that. After 15 years old, our children started to feel pressure. But in China, the parents would post their own way to children. So there is a Chinese saying called suffer more and score higher. I'm really curious about your viewpoint about this saying, if it is true. Why? If not, what is the effect? So, Peter, have you ever heard about that? So, do your Chinese friends said that my success comes from suffering in the early years?
I have heard that, yes. I have heard that, absolutely. And in many aspects, it's actually true. You have to suffer in order to know how you can improve yourself. That only when you are down and it's hurting very much, you know what you want to gain. You put yourself, I will never do this again. It's not me. I need to have food on the table. I need to have a roof over my head. I need to have clothes on my body. So suffering is a good thing in many ways, but it's only the strong people that is capable of pulling themselves up from that level to the next level, to say to themselves, I don't want to be suffering like that. I want something better for myself. In that way, but I don't know, many people are not so capable of doing that and must have help and support in that process. And I think in that process, many times we lose some of the young generation and help them in the wrong way. But for sure, those that really is capable and handling themselves and being strong enough to take that decision. But suffering in the right way is a good thing. But it has to be handled in the right way, that I believe. It's not necessarily for everybody to suffer, that's for sure. So my view on that is you have to be strict, you have to have consequence for your actions, you have to also take responsibility for what you do. And it's not an easy thing to handle the full way. So when you're suffering, you also reach a certain level of that is what I should reach as a goal in whole. So it's a process. It's very much a process. But those that cannot handle it, we tend to lose sometimes, and that's not a good thing. So suffering can be a good thing if it's handled in correct way. That I agree. My point of view.
看来 Peter 的观点跟
Okay. Thank you so much, Peter. I think that your viewpoint is really associated with the Hebrew saying, for youngsters, suffer is helpful. But I'm really curious about the object of suffering. So is your suffering as being a better person? So as you choose to send your child to a school in suburb area, so what is your object? Our subject is to send him to a foreign university. We will not let him have the college entrance examination, so that it was an early decision. As for the China's college entrance examination, as we all say, it is a channel of our forerunners to force our children to engage themselves to this harsh mechanism. And as Peter just mentioned, for the suffering, which I really agree, that we must distinguish the nature of suffering. There are tons of suffering in life. For now, their suffering is steady, and in the future, there are also barriers and many challenges too. And for adults and children, we must see, is there any other option except suffering? So for decision making, if there are some conflicts between parents and children, parents should have some retrospection for themselves. And one of my standards for my child is to be industrious. Such industrialness run counter to the human nature of seeking cozy life. With responsibility and industriousness, a person can really live a life. Challenges and barriers are just inevitable from the outside world, especially. And for example, from the Chinese society and etc., that we cannot protect them from. And there are also some problems in his marriage life and beyond. We cannot free those barriers. So we should develop such a capability of suffering. Such suffering as we cannot escape must be taken care of. When he was little, he can just play around. Oh, okay. But now he's a middle student, so he must study. And for the Chinese mindset of being the top of the society. I do not agree on that. As in China, the only way to secure well-being is to compete against others. As not as Chinese society feature great impulsion and pregnant competition that is really brutal. So parents do not know, they just don't know what kind of options can they have besides pushing their children into studying. So our education is an out one. So for leading our children on suffering, that is not about competing against others for the hierarchy's sake. It should be because of our growth, our inner heart as a well-being, as a human being. We should develop his capability of solving problems and having inner growth. So that is suffering is all about, instead of competing against others. As only 1% of the people is the top players, we would not gain well-being until that. So that is all wrong. So this saying is really incorrect. Oh, okay. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. So in terms of the top of the society, it is all about anxiety of hierarchy, competition, as our children really compete so hard, but among peers all over the world, our children indeed have no competitiveness. As I often said that to those parents, that you must compare your children with his peers around the world. And as it was remarked by Mr. Yang Dongping, also one of the guests of our forum, that we must educate our children and to the top of the society in terms of being a human being. So industriousness, hardworking, such nature is helpful for human beings, such as climbing, hiking. That was really challenging, but there are also something really breathtaking on this journey. But we must sort out the reason why we do the hiking, and we should also care about the emotion of our children. So, as you are both parents of adults and children, so I really care about that, as that is really challenging for my parents. So, Peter, what about you? As you have two children, so is it a double of joyfulness or challenges?
It's a double of joyfulness. Definitely. I can only
真
say
好，
like
你怎么
that.
做到的？
For me,
Okay, how did you manage to do that?
well, they managed to do themselves, actually. That I have to say. And I have a very clear way of looking at this, according to myself. During the time in China, when they were educated in China, there's strictness and homework is just, and they learned that they can only be number one. They have to push for being number one. And that learned them a lot, actually. But after we left for Denmark and they went to Danish school, I asked them, what's the biggest difference between Danish school and Chinese school? Oh, Dad, being in Denmark is like being in paradise. There is no homework at all. You know, there's a very big difference there. And every time I was to a parents' meeting, I've been more or less to all parents' meetings, because I used to work 24/7 when I was in China. I never saw my children. It was handled by nannies and my wife and took care of that. But I took the decision that if I want to have something to do with my kids, I really have to spend time with them. So I took the decision, what do I want to be, a successful businessman, or do I want to be a good father? So I'm trying still to be a good father every day. But for me, I look at two things. When they go to school in the morning and when they come home in the evening, are they happy when they go? And are they happy when they come back? That's the only two things that I concentrate on. For me, it is so important to see that they have the energy, the drive, that they fulfill the decision they have made, and we support that. only that way. Of course, like you said, they will meet challenges in school, friends, homework, everything like that. But we do try to solve that as a team together, so they don't sit alone with that problem. But I look at two things, and I will stand at it 100%. Are they happy when they go to school? And are they happy when they come back? That for me is fundamental and will be for many years to come. So I don't know if I answered the question correctly, but I look
好，
very
我
much.
听到了一个，
Sorry.
我听到了一个小秘密，就
Okay.
是作为父亲，
I've heard a secret that as a father, you must attend all the parents' meeting. So for both girls and boys, are they rebellious? Or you are taking care of this really good. So what about your wife? What about your Chinese wife? What about her feeling?
Now, that's probably where we have the big clashes about education. My wife is, like you said, Chinese, and she has the Chinese background, education, everything like that. And we have had a lot of interesting discussion about this, that I can guarantee you. But having the option, like we have, to see the Chinese education system, and also seeing the Danish education system, and putting our kids through everything, it has more given us a broader view of how different the world really is in terms of learning our kids what to do or not. In China, there's rules and regulation how education should be done. There's ways to do it and traditions to do it, and this, but that also exists in Denmark. So for us, it has been more like a journey, a travel, you can say, where we have good and bads all the way, and we try to take the bads away and just add on the good things that we have with us, and that we push a lot. We don't push, but that we leave to the kids. So for my wife, sometimes it has been an eye-opening. Oh my God, can it be done in this way? And the same for me in China. I say, what the kids have from China: discipline, hardness, you have to be number one. And in Denmark, it's more playfulness. The kids really play a lot, much more than doing homework. Dad, I don't want to do homework today. Why? I really don't want to. That's explanation enough for me. I'm looking at the well-beingness much more than, because I believe very much that if you have fun learning something, you learn 10 times faster than if it's pushed onto you. And that is also, I have seen so much. So I believe very much in that way. That's how I look at that one.
真好。虽然你们两位的文化背景和教
Okay.
育观念
Fabulous.
但是我看到他们商量，然后
See that all by the differences in education and cultural background, but I do see how you accommodate with each other. I think that you are the decision maker in terms of family education, right?
No, I'm not. The kids are the decision maker.
哦，好，你们两个人是
The
孩子们为自己的选择。
kids, they have to take responsible for their life. They have to take decision what they want. I can only show them what I have done. My wife can only show them what she has done. But they have to take responsibility for their own life as early as possible. We will support them. We will help them. And we will show them what we have done in the past. But my road doesn't need to be their road. My family tradition doesn't need to be their tradition. They have to find their own way. And because in 20 years, well, I will be sitting in a nursery home, somebody taking care of me, but it's their future. It's not our future. And therefore, we really have to respect them and listen to what they want to do and support that in the best possible way we can. That only that way we will have these well-balanced kids that take responsibility for themselves and really thrive and develop from the inside. You can say like this, that as we are parents, we have a certain age right now. You two are about, I would guess, 28, something like that. But but experience like very much. But I have to say that we have to provide the kids the opportunity to develop. We have the funds, we have the money, we have the know-how. But what the kids want, we have to support that, because it's their future we're talking about. It's not our future. I hope I make it clear.
真好，真好。海霞，你一定特有收获吧？
Very mind-blowing. I believe that Haixia really learned a lot as Haixia is about to enter the channel. Okay, in terms of Peter's view, I believe that really echo with my husband's. So in terms of discipline, I'm moving from discipline to the other side. There are some backtracks, but I really agree on that. There's a position for parents. I've heard something about the growth, development of society is really about the rebellion against our former generation. Only in that way could we generate new ideas and something new. As our forefathers, they are more restricted, so they may not be that wide-minded, and their major may be physics and beyond. So their major, what they learn, have nothing to do with the development of the current society. So in terms of how we engage with other people, how we engage with the outside world, they help us in that way in entering the new environments. So in terms of joy in learning and forced to learn, it is totally two different things. Some people could learn for life, for their own development, and for their own mind broadening. But as we all know that in the top universities, there are some top scholars, but they suffer from some illness, some mental illness. As in the past, the decisions were made by their parents at all. They have seldom to know and seldom decisions to make in the past. But after they enter university, they are the decision maker. So their capability of taking responsibilities for themselves are just zero. So we should not expect to grow such capabilities overnight after they turn 18 years old. So such issue, actually, in terms of that, the root cause are parents. Chinese parents suck at parenting to some extent. They do not learn about parenting. They are right. They are born right. They do not retrospect themselves to see the correctness of their decision making. So in terms of that, what's really important is the capability of taking responsibilities of their life for our parents. So for our parents, first parents, what really matters is to provide guidance on that. Besides 1,000 years, even in my son's early childhood, I always tell him that in every age, you must take your own responsibilities. For example, when you're 5 or 6, you must take the responsibility of not arguing with each other over toys. So every age has different responsibilities. We're human beings. We can only enjoy what's you offer instead of taking responsibilities. So after turning 18, your life is totally your life. The responsibilities will be your own. Yeah, there are anxiety sometimes. We worry about whether the decisions are correct of them. For example, in my son's habit of computer games, video games, there are naturally some flaw in human nature. In the modern society, there are many things that are called the things to play that will spoil human nature. So that is about human beings seeking of short-term, of short-term joy and well-being. So their obsession on that will outperform the well-being in other respects, for example, studying. So if children are not so good at, for example, engaging with friends, so they may engage themselves with video games for such satisfaction. So it occurred to me sometimes that parents should, by their side, by the side of their children, aiding them to make decisions, just avoiding until be angered during this process. That is what I should learn from Peter. Okay, that's all I want to share. Yes, indeed, that is exactly the problem for parents. I believe that video games is an obsession all over the world for adults and children, right? There might be some conflicts between parents and children. So what about you, Peter? Are they obsessed on video games? So is there any recommendations for you, from you for parents all over the world? Okay.
Okay, you are asking me a very hot topic here. But we have had discussions regarding this very, very much. And I don't care how much time he uses, how much time they uses on computer. Computers is their future. If you look 20 years from now, how would the world look like? If you look 20 years back, how did the world look like with computers? The development is going so incredible fast. So where we are today, well, we are worried about kids playing video games. Actually, it has proven that video games is very healthy. It has proven that their mind develops pretty fast. And what they're doing exactly preparing themselves for 20 years now. So we want to block them at that. We want to stop them in that. We want to be responsible parents and say, you are not allowed to do more than 2 hours a day. You're not allowed to do more than 3 hours or 4 hours a day. You know, I don't think it's the right way. So my wife, you know, she had this saying very often, if you look too much in the video games, your eyes will become very bad. And then we actually have that discussion. And I talked to one of the most professional eye doctors here in Denmark and said, that's not true. And she didn't believe me. My wife didn't believe me. So I had the most, one of the most professional eye doctors telling, there is no evidence that it goes over the eyes. You know, we need to be true about that. And we need to tell our kids, okay, listen here. When I was your age, we did not have video games. We are doing something else. We are playing football. We were out in the this and that. And I can only take my boy as an example. He uses so much time on this computer thing. And whenever there's a problem with the computers today, especially for me, I ask him to solve it. And it takes him 5 minutes. I will be sitting here 2 hours trying to figure out what is going on. So the issue here is I don't have any restrictions at all. And now he starts taking responsibility himself. He said, Dad, listen here. Computer is a good thing for the future. It's my future. But I also know that in order to become very good at this, I have to do exercise every day, at least 1 hour exercise, because the professional guys are doing like this. And I would like to be like that. So he do exercise every day for 1 hour. He does his homework before he plays. And then he has freedom to do whatever. He takes responsibility for that. And that I like very much. And then I told my wife also, his eyes will not suffer from this. I'm pretty sure of that. So I handle it this way. It's responsibility, that's for sure. I give them responsibility and they take it also. So I have no restrictions on this, to be true.
有一个问题，
我想
对我有个问题，
对，我
Okay,
想
actually, I have a question. Well, I believe that for Peter, which is just mentioned, is really mind-blowing for a parent like Haixia. Okay, so how long? How long? You just mentioned that your son's been really a lot of time. So what about the longest time? How many hours? No. I'm talking about age.
Yeah,
So
I would not be surprised that when he came home from school one Friday, he is in after school now. That's a special thing in Denmark. Right now he is in Korea on an exchange. But I would not be surprised that when he comes home Friday, he will be playing until next Saturday morning, sleep a little bit, have some friends over, and they will play again until Sunday, where he has to leave for school. So they will be probably playing 24 hours in a row, something like that. I'm quite certain they will do that, but I don't check because I have to have my.
从几岁到几岁是什么时候开始的呢？
okay, since when he started to play
I would
video games?
say since he was 12, 13. But
一直
right
到现
now,
在，
right, yeah, and but right now he's quite different, you know. He became very socialized, and I just saw some pictures from Korea. They're singing and being happy and having friends over, and he tends to spend less and less time on computers actually. But he's really good at it, I have to say. Or maybe it's me that's becoming too old and too slow. I don't know, but it's their future. And if you give them freedom to do what they want to do, to have fun with it, then for sure, sooner or later, they will find out that there's other things in life than just video games. But let them, you try to block them, you try to stop them, you put boundaries, you don't allow them to do, they will do precise opposite. They will find ways, try to find ways how to avoid this, you know. And I don't want that. I want to have that openness and say, Dad, I want to play 24 hours. Okay, have you done your homework? Yeah. Okay, then it's no problem for me if that's what you want. But I don't want to put boundaries on that, because young boys, young girls in that age, especially teenager, they will try to find ways how to avoid the barriers and how to cheat the parents and things like that. And I don't want to do that. So my point of view on that one, I want them to be open and honest in communicating with the parent.
我非常感动，因为我这两
Okay, it really moved me actually. Is nowadays in my dialogues with some of my friends, they're so worried about their children's condition and their obsession on video games. They do not exercise, they do not do homework, they do not exchange it with their parents. So, Peter just mentioned, if we put barriers, they can always break the barriers if parents can be laid back like Peter. In such relaxment, you can play all weekend. Just telling such things to their children with such a mindset is about having their children taking responsibilities for their own, which is the core principle of your education philosophy. So for Peter, you trust your children more instead of break the barriers. So such things will lead your children to find something just like video games. So that is my enlightenment from Peter's point of view. So in China, many parents would say that there is freedom for my children, but actually that is not true. So what is your viewpoint, Haixia? Okay, as I mentioned, I am a strict parent. I think that in theory, I can accept that, but I do not trust them that much. I always think that they do not have capabilities like that to take their own responsibility. But with more barriers, there will more barrier breaking. If they want something, we should give them something more so that such a desire will stop. So in terms of video game, I also discussed with my son, which one do you like better, playing video games or hang out with your friends? Actually, he likes hang out with his friends better. So video games would be played after the courses ended, as he's now in boarding school, or on weekends, because I have a busy schedule in weekdays. And as my son is a teenager, so he has his own stuff to do. So in his free time, he may play video games. So I haven't striken a balance on that. My husband trusts my son to a larger extent, with barriers indeed. We have restrictions of time, of the hours of video game playing. We have concrete cases of our friends. His son concentrates on video games, playing video games at midnight with no exchanges with parents. But for a while, his son slept all day. His parents was just so confused. Well, later they find out it's because his son played video game all night. So they would not trust him. So there will be no patience of parents. So with no self-control like that, there should be help from parents. So his son allowed him to play video games as his son used to play video games back in his childhood. So for my friend was really open on that with his child. But after that scenario, he even removed computer. And after whining, there will be a restriction of video game hours in the weekends. That is not something Peter will like. But every child differs from each other. And that is also a matter of atmosphere. In schools, for many children, they have friends at school in a friendly environment where they can relax. But in China, with the school bullying and pressure at school, such an atmosphere is not so friendly. It's less friendlier than the atmosphere of his free time. So he would resort to computer games as a channel out. So families should provide a relaxing environment on that. As for the children of some of my friends, after they started to suffer from mental illness, my friends would take them all over the country to heal them. So after 1 year of healing, the child was way better. I have no answer now, but I am still having my exploration. What Peter just shared really enlightened me. I believe that maybe I should trust my child better. Well, I should make my own decision on whether to trust them that much. Okay, every family differs, and every child differs, but there is something uncommon. For the families where children are not that accompanied by their parents, they resort to video games for well-being. And it is especially true for the children with major anxiety in the physical world, as I mentioned. If children have friends, have satisfaction in physical world, they might play football instead of video games. But if there is major pressure in the physical world, maybe they will resort to video games to relieve their pressure. So there will be such an obsession. So for the midterm exam, the midterm exam of family education that isn't about them. For example, what we have done wrong when our children were 3 or 4 years old, so that will lead to some flaws here in a dozen years. So a dozen years is the midterm exam of parenting. So what kind of suggestions do you have for parents of dozen children? How could we endow our children the right to be imperfect? And how could we enable our children to find well-being in studying? That is challenging our viewpoint. Many of the anxieties of parents come from their obsession on perfection of their children. So on the right to be imperfect, what is your viewpoint? Peter, could you go first? So
Absolutely.
in Denmark, is every parent like you? Or
No, I myself, very much.
只代表你自己。
Yeah, I'm definitely myself. And my wife is herself. We have our own personalities. It's how we interact that makes the difference. But in terms of being unperfect, in terms of being, how do you say, I believe very much that if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn anything. You have the right to make mistakes. The more mistakes you do, the more you will learn, because it's from the mistakes that you make that you become better. So this of being unperfect, I think every child is perfect in that sense, that they have their own personality, and we have to nurture that personality, and we have to respect that personality in each and every way we can as a parent. Unperfect, I don't want perfect kids. I want unperfect kids. Only that way they will be able to learn and grow much faster and stronger. Do I want them to be number one in everything? No, I don't want them to be number one in everything. I would like them to, what they really feel about, what they have fun about, they strive to become number one. But that does not necessarily mean that they will become number one. They will learn much more for being number 2 or number 3 or number 4, because then they will set themselves a new goal. Why is that better? What can I do different in order to reach that? Because I guarantee you, not all of us can be Xi Jinping, not all of us can be Mette Frederiksen, the president of Denmark. We all have to find our role in this society, in this life, and it's individual. But if my boy or girl really wants to be a professor in mathematics, go for it. But you will make a lot of mistakes on the road. But it's from the mistakes that you do that you learn. So do as many mistakes as possible and learn from them. Only that way, sooner or later, you will be professor in mathematics or whatever you want to be. So that is my view on that one. So the right to be imperfect is actually pretty perfect. Just imagine if we are all the same, how boring it would be. We must be imperfect. We must be different, or else we will not have this conversation. And I like this conversation very much. So the right to be imperfect, absolutely. Only way to learn.
对，谢谢 Peter， 我也特别同意，我也特别喜欢这句话。
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate this sentence. Is there no life that are exactly the same? If we're seeking perfection, then the world would be so boring without diversity. So Haixia, what about the Chinese parents? Can they take this concept? Would you say that it only adapts to the family with resources? What about the random families? What about the random children? So will there be opponents? There are a ton of opponents. We are the minority here. Yes, with the right to be imperfect, there are just so few of them will agree on that. So on your suggestion to the Chinese parents, so that is more about the retrospection of parents. We should ask ourselves, what is perfection? Are you a perfect parent yourself? If you're not, how can you ask your children to be perfect? That is number one. And then, secondly, what is perfection? In terms of the standard of perfection in China, so is that about good behavior or expertise and competitiveness against others? So is that perfection? So in terms of standards, successful standard of success is really slow in China without diversity. But in countries like Denmark with such great GNH, the diversity, the differences, the individualism of the human beings are more respected. But in China, we prefer collectivism. We prefer the children that listen to their parents, even if you're even 30 or 40, 50 years old. Our parents will still say something like that to you. Oh, you really listen to your parents in China. So what is the standard of perfection? Is it the standard of physical success? Or what? What kind of standard should we reach to secure perfection? The parents must give that up. Such is just an illusion. Parents are not perfect themselves. Parents are just normal people. So parents' responsibility is to deliver good, sound education to their children. It's just after seeing the world and having their own viewpoints, taking their own responsibilities, and parents choose something simple. Or our children will not choose an obsession that is so fancy. That is okay for me. But my anxiety is that not that it's not about whether I am okay with it. It is about whether my child is okay with it. Maybe in his inner nature, Chinese parents will cherish the well-being of their children. But what they're doing is all for their own children's sake. They worry about the children's future if them apart. In China, maybe 90% of the people are not the top ones. And they could get to lower classes overnight. So I actually understand their anxiety from the illness of the entire society. Such an illness should be respected by us. In such an ill environment, how could we provide a healthy environment in the family where children can have the power? Yeah, with globalization, we have options for their children. It's just with better capabilities, maybe our children could move to another country with their capabilities. If we are raising perfect children, that is about the burden of perfect capabilities. So that is just an illusion. There is no standard like that, but I do understand their anxiety. It's just in China, there is no diversity in Chinese parenting. The parents themselves should be educated. Yeah, including me also. Yes, for every parent, every stage of our children is a brand new one. When our children turn 13, we should learn how to parent with 13-year-olds. So your viewpoints actually go hand in hand with each other. We see the right to be imperfect as erring as the stepstones for learning, but it's also how we have learned ourselves. And with the retrospection in this process, So ours in the first half of our parenting may be how could we correct our parenting in the second half of parenting. And even for Peter, as such a happy father, there are also many years to come in parenting. So there is just a lot, so much to retrospect, so much to explore in parenting. So we should give up such an obsession on the concrete objects of parenting. Exactly like what Haixia just said. We parents are normal people ourselves. We should ask ourselves, we are 40 years old. What about other 40-year-olds? We're no better than them. So what you mentioned, there is something really significant, that is the right with respect to children's right. The accommodation of the current status of our children, and etc. So that is the respect to children's right, which is really seldom in China. Peter also mentioned the concept of the midterm exam you left. So we're expecting the second half of parenting. Yes, so in terms of life, there is this metaphor of exam from my perspective, but actually that is wrong. We should not think that way. We should grow with our children. Such a growth will feature surprises and enlightenments. Without obsession on perfection, we will get closer to the so-called perfection. Yes, indeed. I always wish we could strike a balance. Okay, last question. On the family education in China, there is a phenomena. The absence of fathers. As Peter mentioned, that he's a great father at home. And there's a sentence that really moved me, that he has two options, a good businessman or a good father. There are a million of good businessmen, but for your son and for your daughter, they have only one great father. So how did that happen? All of this pressure of supporting the family, and how did you strike the balance?
Well, I can only say like this, that it took, it was actually something that happened in the family that made me really think it over, what kind of person I wanted to be as a parent or as a father. My father passed away after working hard his whole life, I would say 7 years ago. And, you know, it makes me wonder, why do you work so much as you do, Peter? Why do you work 24/7? You have taken responsibility together with your wife to put 2 kids into this world. That's even a bigger responsibility than being a successful businessman or being a businessman at all. So pretty early, I took the decision and said to myself, where is it that I should spend my time? What is it that really matters in this life? And you have only one life. I have some friends that is totally stressed out, that is working like crazy, never see the family. And in China, I understand also that the migrant workers, they will only be home for Chinese New Year and never see their kids. And much of the parenthood is actually put in the grandfathers and grandmothers about traditions and old ways of looking at it. But I took the decision, I want to be there for my kids when they're growing up. The environment they come from and where they are right now, and the environment they are supposed to grow up in, the frames that we have, is actually what makes the future for them. So therefore, as much that I can help in this process, especially through the teenage years and young years, it is very important. Especially for me, I'm part of this responsibility raising 2 kids. So I also have to take the responsibility and do that at the same time. But it's not always easy when you have to make money, and you have to support the family, and you have all of this. But I took the decision, and then we more or less economically was secure, so we could support that situation also. And therefore, yeah, quite easy decision for me. I want to spend time with my kids while they're growing up, and giving them my experience so they can judge by themselves and take their own responsibilities. So I look very much forward when they're leaving home, because then I can take over the kids' rooms and I can have my own man's room, you know. But until they leave home, I will be there for them. That's for sure.
Okay, wonderful. I've heard that in Peter's viewpoint, there's a clear option. You must sort out what is important in life. So in this decision making, in your life planning, you have prioritized that. So that is what you gain today. And for Haixia, as parents, we know that actually there is a limited time when our children need us. For example, now your son is in boarding school. Maybe there will be just only 12 years before them leaving us. Yes, indeed. Okay. Peter really surprised me when he mentioned that his friends were hard workers. You mean, so are those friends Chinese or Danish? Peter?
No,
很紧张。
I
丹
have,
麦朋友，
I have both Chinese and Danish friends.
两个都有，对对。
我也有点吃惊，我以
OK，
为是
OK
中国的。
Yes, it really surprised me also.
No,
I suppose those hardworking friends were all Chinese. Yes, maybe that is a common situation all over the globe. Okay.
I take very much, I have a lot of respect for the parents that is working 24/7 and trying to raise kids at the same time. It's a hard thing to do, often stressed and discussions, and you don't have the same balance. Right now, I have a job where I leave in the morning and come home in the evening. And that for me is that I see my kids every day. It's a prioritized thing for me. I took that decision. I know it has a cost on the other side, but I'm willing to take that cost, because the time we have now with the kids doing their growing up, we will never get it back, you know. That's the only time we have. And I enjoy to see them grow. I enjoy to be a part of their problem solving if they want me to. But in order for them to have that, I must be there. I must be physically there so they can feel that, oh, yeah, I can talk to father. Well, maybe it's not always right what he says. He's an old fool, but I will still listen to what he says, you know. So, but this presence of being there when they need it, that for me was a top priority, actually. I was not there when the young years, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. I was not there so much. I worked 24/7. But I don't think it's worth it. I think it's worth taking the responsibility to raise the kids and be there for them, especially when they need it most, because it is foundation. Right now they are growing, so the foundation for the future is right now. So that's why I choose what I chose. Right or wrong, I can't say, but yeah, that's my decision on that one.
我其
海
实
霞可以回答一下，他不知道他的决定是对是错。
Okay. So Haixia, do you think this decision is wrong or right? Well, I have no idea either, as it is our own option. I've been a lawyer for over a decade, but for such a period of time, I stay at home. Yeah, I served as a lawyer, but I spend my time babysitting, actually, without taking any tests. So before my son entered 3 years old, I accompanied him full time. But after that, I struck a balance between babysitting and working. And when he entered primary school, the
周六日
pressure grew. And now he's in boarding school. I make sure that on weekends I'll be there for him. So, on the absence of China, that is such a phenomenon in China. And in terms of the balance on that, in China, we will not ask women on that. How did you strike a balance? But we ask the children so often to fathers. I believe that such a mindset, such an ideology has shaped this. If there is someone that should make a sacrifice, that should be mothers instead of fathers. If it is the father that make the sacrifice, there will be so much pressure for the family. So if the father makes this decision by himself, the family will face such a pressure. If the father is forced to engage in parenting, that is so wrong. As Peter mentioned so many times, we should accompany our children in their early childhood. In his children's early childhood, he did not be there to a large extent, but for the effective accompanition, he really managed to do that. The effectiveness that I'm mentioning here refers to like this: not only being face to face with them, but hang out together, exchange with each other, not playing smartphones together in just one room. And as a child is not growing, my husband and I did not discuss on parenting that much, but on weekends, even if I'm in another room, I'll guarantee that my son could find me. And I'll also manage family time, the quality time, for example, going to the theater and etc., getting to know our son's life. But since the outbreak of the pandemic, there's many abnormalities in life. Maybe we cannot spend the quality time outside with the quarantines. So we do not engage with the outside world that much. But in the recent years, in my family, the parent-child relation and mental illness is pretty sound in my family. That's so fortunate. So such parenting responsibility must be taken by both parents, and by both fathers and mothers. So we should appeal to the engagement of fathers in parenting. We should spend time, pay attention to parenting, which is beneficial to the growth of our children. If we only chat with our children for half an hour, that is not parenting. So the standard of father parenting is not so high. Yes, you mentioned the effectiveness of parenting. Father's parenting could not be replaced by that of mothers. Okay, our dialogue is really interesting on well-being and the right to be imperfect. Our Danish father has a Chinese wife. So on the nurturing of the girl and the daughter of well-being, they really shared a lot with us. And our Chinese mother could also be a representative of Chinese parents. So parents should broaden their mind to guarantee the well-being of their children. And that really moved me that the well-being of the children is really concrete. It may be just the greeting to our children, be happy today, or you could just be some care to our children when he got back. Or it can also be the decision making between career and parenting. Just as Peter mentioned that there's just only one chance for me to parent, so I must make the decision. That it seems though I heard a statement to the world as a father that I need to be there for my children. So that is about prioritizing. What we prioritize. Could we spend 10-minute effective parenting with our children? That would really leave something, really mean something to our children. And we should also free ourselves from such obsession of forcing our children to be the so-called top hierarchy. That is also a process of enjoy parenting for ourselves. So after hearing that, I myself was really moved. So I hope that those of insight and those of issues could be enlightened here. Thank you so much. Our Chinese mom in Beijing and our Danish father. You're not together physically, but you are together in securing well-being for your children. On that, there is common sense. Thank you so much. So for today, let's call it today. I'm really looking forward to engaging on that face-to-face in the future. Thank you so much.